Greetings, traveler. Often at work, when we're making games, we have disagreements with other team members. One side starts to argue, then the other side starts to argue, and the whole process seems endless and unhelpful. However, I stumbled upon this technique in my career that completely changed the way I handle arguments at work, and in fact, not only doesn't take energy from you when you deal with it this way, but it gives energy back to you and the other person and the team. So today what I want to do is talk about the hard way of dealing with arguments at work, especially as I experience them, and then share with you my 3-step easy mode of dealing with arguments. So basically you win from the situation every single time. My name is Xanthos. I've been working in the games industry for over 13 years. And creative style arguments or architecture style arguments or any arguments really around the game's development are extremely common. Before we get to start to make anything, first we have to agree on how we're going to make it, right? And of course, since everybody has a different skill set and a different background, it is extremely natural that disagreements of this type arise. So let's say, for example, you're working on a game and it's a new product, and someone says, well, we should have an XP and level based system for this game because that's a good idea. And then somebody else says, no, we shouldn't have a level based system, it should be a free system instead, and you grow in a different way. And the arguing goes back and forth, and you basically have no way of getting out of this loop. So what would be the hard way of dealing with this situation? In my experience, nobody wants to lose an argument, right? Somehow in society, arguments must be won always and forever. There is always a huge demerit of losing an argument, and winning an argument seems to be positive. Although when you closely think about it, there is no actual benefit to winning an argument, since even if you do win, you haven't convinced anyone to see anything differently, and nobody will change their actual actions after you won or somebody won that given argument. So sticking with the hard mode, you argue back and forth, you say all the things you want to say, and eventually somebody gets fed up with wasting time on this, and they say, okay, you know what, this is not worth the time, we're doing this, and begrudgingly the team moves forward. So in my situation, I was in an argument at some point where me and the other person had different ideas about what would be best for the game. So having done all my arguments in the previous years, I thought, well, why don't I try something different? And I didn't realize what my new way of dealing with the argument was until I was asked about it in an interview several years later. In an interview, somebody asked me, let's say you're working on a game, you have an opinion, another person has an opinion, you disagree. How do you handle that situation? And that's when I thought back to my experience, and I answered the interview, and the interview was a success, so I guess that contributed to it. So how would I deal with it in an easy way, so that I always make sure that we're not stuck in this deadlock situation where nothing moves forward? I would deal with it in 3 steps. So step 1, when this argument arises, is to identify the question we're trying to answer. So 1 is identify. When we identify the question that we're trying to answer, somehow things become extremely clear. Instead of arguing back and forth between the 2 points, thinking about the question first somehow seems to focus everything. So in the case of my experience, instead of talking about which system is better for the game, why don't we instead talk about the game itself and what it tries to achieve? What are the game pillars? What is the game direction, the game vision? What is the game trying to achieve? What experience we're going for? Having a clear view of that enables us to take step 2. And step 2 is simply present the arguments. And by presenting the arguments, I don't mean that we're trying to decide here who's right and who's wrong, because that is irrelevant, and convincing someone in this situation is also irrelevant. There's no victory here in convincing someone that you're right or you're wrong. The victory in this situation is to find out what best serves the game. So by presenting the arguments, I didn't present it from the perspective of what I said and why we should do what I said, but rather relative to the question of what we're trying to do here. How will each suggestion serve the game? And this takes distance and one step away from what I said and what the other person said. Now we're looking at the arguments specifically, and we're each trying to find as many supporting reasons for this argument and why would best serve the game. So how would that play out? I would say, this is my suggestion. It helps the game because the game is trying to achieve so and so and so, and this feature will serve it in so and so and so way. So it's very specific, and it's not about what I said, it's about how that suggestion best serves the game, which is exactly the kind of conversation we want to be having. And in this situation, it is very easy to see how something would serve a greater cause. Because let's not forget that the purpose of having people in a team working on a game is to put together their skills and their experience to create as good of a game as possible. In a sense, we have the common mission of working together to output a single high quality game. That is our common goal. There is no situation where one can lose that goal but another person can win in that goal. It is a shared goal. We are a team. So we're both, or all of us, are trying to push to achieve that. So when we present the arguments and say, if we take option A, this is what we get. If we take option B, this is what we get. Which is better? Which is more closely aligned to what the game is trying to achieve? Or would it make more sense to blend the two options? Or is there a third and fourth option that would best serve the game other than the originally presented arguments? That is the conversation worth having. Who's right and who's wrong is not worth having, even if you decide the winner. Having the conversation to find out what best serves the game is exactly what you want to be talking about. And when you present all that stuff and you have all the facts on the table, then you decide. And it can often be the case that you cannot decide between the two of you or the three of you and whatever, and somebody else has to come in. But usually at step 2, when you both present the arguments and you see how closely they are aligned to the vision of the game or the goal of the game or the pillars and so on, it is not an opinion anymore. It is very factual. So if the game, for example, wants to clearly separate the progress of the player, then perhaps a level-based system is a closer match. But if the game wants to put emphasis on the freedom and the linearity of the experience, then perhaps a not level-based system is more closely aligned to that. And that is no longer an opinion. It's something you can examine almost mathematically and see what the answer is. So if it's obvious enough to convince all parties involved that indeed this would be a closer match for this situation, then everybody has learned something in this situation and everybody is mentally richer going forward. But even if that's not possible because people are not qualified to make a decision or there's not enough experience or evidence to make a decision, in that case usually a manager, a team leader, game director, producer, and so on can, by looking at the facts presented, make the decision since they have all the information to base the decision on. So when I got asked that question in the interview of how I would deal with an argument if it arose at work, that was my answer, that I would essentially talk with the other person and try to present the facts in such a way that we can decide what best serves the game. And that is a common point between me and the other person in that situation. So if it turns out that his suggestion would better serve the game, then I win by supporting it. Because my victory is not winning an argument, my victory is the game being as good as possible. That is what I'm trying for, that is what we're all trying for. If I win an argument, then everybody has gained exactly nothing by it. Perhaps we've all lost some time. But by finding a way to make the game better, that is the best possible result we could get out of this situation. So to quickly recap on this method, when an argument arises, identify the question, why the argument exists, try to see what we're trying to solve here rather than blindly going back and forth, and then I'd present how each argument would support the question or best answer the question, examine for fit, examine if there's a blend of the two opinions or other alternatives that would better answer the question or better serve the goal. And based on that, in step 3, decide. And if it's not possible to decide, then a higher rank member of the team or a producer or manager or director can easily make the decision based on the arguments presented. So there you have it. I hope that makes your life a little easier at work, and it makes things less emotionally charged and more solution-based and logic-based. So not only all these like difficult situations and time wasted is avoided at work, but everybody gains as much as possible from the experience. Thank you so much for your time. I really hope this helps at least one other person out there. If you do use it or you have been using it, please let me know how it works. I would love to hear it as well. And as always, have fun.